Catherine, and you can see I'm from the University of Galway, and I am here to talk about some of those everyday things that people have mentioned that can help our brain health. Everyday things that can help us to connect and thrive and love each other, and how they can help those people with dementia, but everybody, really. So just to tell you my story first, I'm a nurse. I come from a nursing background. I was a children's nurse and worked in Crumlin Hospital, which you may be familiar with. Travelled to the UK and Dublin, but been in Galway since 2000, been a lecturer in Galway since 2008. I have 2 teenage children and a dog named Dennis, and you'll understand why that's important. And as Laura said, I do involved in psychosocial research for people living with dementia. So I'm just going to talk about a few of these projects. I'm going to look at the INUP project, a bit about animal therapy, and a kind of a newer concept called the shared table, which hasn't happened yet, but quite excited. So all research starts with a hunch, then we follow it up with the evidence, but I started my research with a hunch. And this is my grandmother, who was fortunate enough to meet 8 of her 9 great-grandchildren, so that's her with my children when they were younger. And I used to see the way her face lit up when we came to visit, not to see me, but rather to see them. She always went down to the shop and stocked her cupboards with chocolate buttons and things that the kids shouldn't have been eating, but I thought it's fine. But I just saw the joy and the connections that they had. The blankets on the right-hand side, my other grandmother made the one on the bottom. She was really into arts and crafts, and she gave me all of her embroidery threads and things like that, so I used to do stuff with her. So I replicated her blanket, which is the one that was lying on top. And this kind of, I suppose, is the grounding thoughts around the INUP project. So the INUP project, it isn't an acronym, and I'm probably in trouble for not using an acronym. But INUP is an Irish word. It's a term for yarn that's used in weaving and for describing the goodness in people. So I just thought it was a nice way to capture the potential of intergenerational activities. So the aim of this project, it's a 2-year project, it's only in its infancy at the moment, is to develop an intergenerational program for people with dementia, or inclusive of people with dementia. And intergenerational programs are defined as activities that bring different generations together in a meaningful way through arts and crafts, through walking that we've listened to, and music, and gardening, any sort of activities. And I suppose the focus of this research is around community daycare settings and residential settings, but I just wanted to talk about it in more general terms as well. So, what does INUP look like? And this is again where the concept came from, the 2 balls of wool being the young people and the older people, inclusive of those living with dementia. The hands are the people, the roles, the staff, the people who've helped facilitate this connection. The needles represent the tools that we need in terms of the activities, the policies, the health and safety, the research, all that stuff that happens kind of around the connection. And then the final thing is the knitting together. And this is an analogy that we've been working with based on the evidence that we have. So before, I think it was mentioned earlier, before we actually run with the program, we want to find out what works and what doesn't work. So we're looking at the international evidence, and this is kind of the story that's being told through the international evidence. And what can happen through intergenerational programs? So forming relationships and connections, and even the title of today is around connections. Enjoyment, engagement for the people living with dementia. Young people learn about aging, they learn about dementia, but they also learn about empathy, and I work with people in the UNESCO Child and Family Centre who have input into this area of empathy development for young people. And I think even as Catherine mentioned earlier, young people will one day be working as hairdressers or in boots, and it's important that they have that ability to see and connect with every type of person. And a broader impact is around social change, again, changing the perceptions of communities and reducing stigma and some of the challenges that people face in day to day. So in terms of, this is the project, this is where we're going, we'll be developing these interventions, we're looking at bringing transition year students together with people with dementia attending day centres. But for everyday life, for all of us in the community, what can this concept of, connectivity and intergenerational connectivity mean? So we can think about things in the community that bring children and older people together, maybe different events, different ceremonies, just ways that people can meet and connect with each other. And we also need to consider the people in our community. So, in the last couple of decades, we have huge amounts of people young people whose grandparents may be living in a different country, or older people who may not have family and things. So ways that we can be creative in bringing people, so not just my grandmother meeting her great-grandchildren, but people who want to be around children or want to be around younger people and may not have the opportunity. We've talked about reminiscence and the importance of that, and learning through reminiscence. Children can learn a lot through the experiences of other people, and that focus on empathy and awareness. So that's the INOC project. I'm probably going very fast, I don't know. Bear with me, I'm a bit nervous. So now I'm going to talk about another hunch I had. So this is Dennis, the dog that I mentioned. And I didn't miss a deadline. I forgot about a deadline where I had to submit a research proposal, and I had 2 hours to write it. And my dog was there, and my guinea pigs were there at the time. They're gone now. A little flutt in the sky. And I thought about, again, that connection that we have with animals. So this was kind of where the next project was born. And this is a project that's near its completion. It's being done by a PhD student called Do Zhang. I should have mentioned the people's names at the beginning of on my first slide. And she's looking at animal-assisted interventions. So animal-assisted interventions, I just call it animal therapy just for ease, but what they are programs using human and animal interactions that improve health and well-being, and in this case for people with dementia. And what types of animals, so again, in the community you're talking primarily about pets or animals and birds that are in your local area. In terms of residential care or daycare settings, dogs are the most popular animals that are being used. Horses are also popular, and more so in America than here, and farm animals, so chickens, hens, sheep, goats, all sorts of animals can be used in this type of intervention. They evoke memories. Again, we talk about reminiscence for those who may have grown up in rural communities or farming backgrounds. Myself growing up with horses. So it's whatever works. And again, flexibility is key. Not everybody likes animals, not everybody likes children, but those who do. Did I say that? It has to be bespoke and it has to be person-centered. I think that's the key point. What kind of activities work in terms of animal therapy? So obviously the best is the cuddling, the hugs, and the grooming and the petting. But there's also kind of surrounding activities, again, that kind of promote physical activity, promotes brain health, thinking, and these can include walking, training, riding, throwing balls, things like that. And then creative activities around the animals. One of the nicer ones in the research is around a residential setting where they had a hen coop, and everybody was involved in decorating and painting the hen coop, and then the obvious benefit of going in and collecting the eggs and having them for breakfast and things. So there's a lot of ways around not just the animal themselves, but the purpose that they create. I'm just keeping an eye on the time thing. So how do they help? Sensory stimulation, trigger memories, again reminiscence. They're great for starting conversation. I've spoken to more people in my housing estate walking my dog than I ever did in the 10 years I was there beforehand. That sense of care and responsibility, providing an opportunity to connect with other people in nature, and again, that physical activity piece. So there's a lot of research out there that advocates for the use of animal interventions. Some of the quotes include, or some of the impacts, include people with dementia may get improvement on mood and body, may get improved brain functions and language speaking. Carers and supporters observe benefits of animal-assisted intervention for people with dementia and hope for a longer impact in daily life. So a lot of the we talk about statistics and measurements. A lot of the measurements around the effectiveness of animal therapy tend to be more in the moment rather than long term. But sometimes, and I think it was mentioned when we were throwing balls of paper, that being present and in the moment can sometimes just be good enough for now anyway. So what can this mean for you, bringing it back to the community, thinking about the people in your community who may have dementia or may be looking for support? Think about, if you don't want a pet in your house, think about the birds and the animals around you in the parks, looking at the birds in the trees and the kind of therapeutic nature of that. The physical activities, so again, my grandmother that you saw at the beginning, she had a rabbit and a cockatiel, and they were both, neither of them were kept in cages, they just wandered around the house, but the activities that she involved, what she had to do in order to care for them, going to the shops, I used to bring her to the pet shop, we talked to everybody, so again, it's that talking point and that connection with others, and again the reminiscence and storytelling around animals and animals that have been present throughout your life, so that's the animal therapy one. This is my last hunch. So this is my mom. Only a couple of weeks ago, her 81st birthday, and I thought it was I got her permission to put the photo up, but it just reminded me of the value of eating together. And we're a big family for birthdays. We always have cakes and parties and wine and lots to eat. And my daughter, who's 15, always makes a cake. And her and my mom have quite a special relationship, and they're always playing tricks on each other. So they have this thing about frozen peas. So my daughter started putting peas into my mom's desserts and things. Yeah, my mom, we came back from a week's holidays and our house was covered in peas in different random places. But it's the joy and the connection that they have through that and that element of food. And I know food came up this morning as well. And Noel mentioned ice cream, if I remember, which, yeah. So I was contacted by a researcher in Ghana, and he has put forward a proposal. We're waiting to see if it will be funded, but the research is called the Shared Table, and how does shared intergenerational dining influence that experience of personhood and social connectivities for people living with dementia. So the term is called commensality, and commensality, again, I haven't included references or any academic papers, but they're available should you wish afterwards. But commensality is that idea of dining together, and it's not just about nutrition. It should hopefully improve nutrition, but also addresses social hunger and that need for social connections and conversations with others. So this program would be grounded in sociology. Ivan is a dietitian, and the idea of this contact zone, this lived experience, where young people and older people can come and eat and share together, or even cook together, or learn about food together. And again, that multicultural aspect as well. We live in a multicultural society, so learning about all these wonderful foods and flavours that are available to us and how that can help prompt those conversations. So what can that mean for you in the community? So again, sharing meals, thinking about who could come to dinner, or whose house you could go to for dinner, or who shall I meet for coffee and a scone in a local coffee shop, and that preparation of foods together. And there's something lovely about preparing food when you're with somebody and talking about it. And again, back to reminiscence and storytelling about foods and things that we enjoyed growing up. So they were my hunches. As I said, there's evidence to support those. Some of the research is ongoing, but looking at the international evidence, we know that these things have a place, not just for brain health and dementia, but for all of us, we're historically come from a place where community means a lot, and we need to hold on to that and think of ways that we can keep that sense of community. So keep talking to each other, connect with children if you like them, connect with animals if you like them, and keep eating together if you like food, which I think we all do.
We can all agree that that was really interesting and insightful, and I could see Noel from our Cully Road Day Centre getting inspired, so probably the few llamas there.
I know a llama guy.
Does anybody have any questions? Oh yes, I see a question here in the third row.
Thank you very much for that. It was a fascinating presentation, but it also brings me back to my childhood experience of growing up in an intergenerational. Sorry, thank you for that, but it's really stimulated a lot of memories for me of growing up within an intergenerational family, and the amount of stories that I learned of the history of the family that have left with me, but it also reinforces for me what a lot of work that's going on at the moment, where we're making communities and things like that inclusive for people with dementia, so that there's a freedom and there's an understanding that people know what you're going through and they can reach out to you. And I think the principles that you presented in that help build on the kind of work that we're doing, and the more that's done for people like that, the more inclusive, the more open, the more approachable things are, the better the quality of life for anybody living with any kind of dementia can be. So thank you for that.
Any more questions?
And just to follow that comment, I think obviously why I'm here today and with the Alzheimer Society, but I think the learning and the empathy skills development for the young people will be crucial, and I can see a place sometime where, we won't have to keep telling people, Catherine won't need to explain, that people will have that insight and that intuition as well. So.
Okay, brilliant. Love it. Thank you so much.